morning, everyone. My name is Pat Yon-Pradit, and I'm Code.org's Chief Academic Officer. Welcome to CS Journey's Class Chats, my journey building the Internet of Things. I'm so excited to be with you all today. I'd like to introduce our speaker, Wale Oladehin from Amazon. Wale, we're so
Hi.
glad to have you. Could you introduce yourself, your role at Amazon, and also tell us a little bit about what you like to do outside of work?
Awesome, Pat. Really excited to be here today, too. So my name is Wale Oladehin. Everyone calls me Wale. I am actually the head of solution architects in Internet of Things. So connecting, devices and, assets to the cloud. So I've been at Amazon for 7 years. And funny enough, outside of technology, I actually was a dancer. I'll share some photos, but I actually was a professional salsa dancer for several years. So that's me dancing in Istanbul and also dancing with one of my partners. And then before that, I was actually a break dancer. So, outside of work, having something fun to do beyond just, sitting behind a keyboard.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know how many salsa dancers or break dancers are out there in the audience, but you know what? Because you're a salsa dancer, I got to tell you, I have tried salsa dancing in the past, and my greatest weakness is my timing. I just can't get the timing down. Like I see it done and I feel the music, but my timing is just off. So Wale, I was thinking, could you show me just the basic movements and maybe like a turn as well?
Yeah.
And actually, students out there, classes out there, whoever is watching, I actually would love it if you would join us. Yes, that's right. So students are like looking at each other in the they're like, whoa, I wasn't expecting this. But yes, this morning you were gonna learn how to do a little salsa dancing. So yes, you move, get out of your desk.
Yep, I'm already standing.
Okay, that's okay, kids. I know you're looking at each other, you're looking at teachers, please allow them to do it. Go ahead and stand up and
okay, Pat.
I just grabbed some salsa music. Let's see how this goes. Is that good? Do you hear it?
Yeah, you can hear it a little bit. That's good.
Okay, that's good. All right.
Okay.
Show me the basic movements.
So, Pat, the secret with the timing is it's 1, 2, 3, pause on 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're going to start with your right leg. I'm going to set my right leg out. You can't see it as much. And then you're going to go to your left leg. So think 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. Okay. And then it's easier to see my arms, but your arms almost do a little bit of a figure 8.
All right. 1, 2, okay. 1, 2, 3, pause.
5, 6, 7.
Okay.
And then you finish it off with a turn. 5, 6, 7. You step forward and then turn.
1, 2, 3, pause. 5, 6, 7, pause.
You got it. And then the finale with the turn. There, you did it. Right. Nice. Right. We got to give Pat a round of applause for that. Look at that. 2 of them. Great. Right. I'm here all week.
Wow. So Amazon, worldwide head of worldwide solutions architects at Amazon, as well as professional salsa dancer. Now the break dancing. Now I'm not going to even go there. So everyone's kids, you're probably really interested in that as well, but we don't have the probably the space for that. Maybe class chat.
The space.
Yeah. Right. So, Wale, thanks for letting us know a little bit about your role and also what you do outside of work. I'm curious, what role does computer science play in your career? And if you could also give us an example of a recent project that you all have worked on that involves computer science.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. So I studied computer science when I went into college, and I think, I started programming actually in the 4th grade. And even today, what's really interesting is, computer science leaves you with a lot of great theories. And those theories exist, they last today as they will 20 years from now, 30 years from now. So when you learn things like for loops and if statements and while loops, like what you're really learning is what are things that are repetitive? What might require you to take a different condition or action based on input you have? So I find that programming has helped me not only make better decisions with the architectures that I design or my team designs, but also how we think about like the way to get to success. I'll share my screen again, but a really good example of that is, a last really cool project I worked on. Um, Amazon has like like wind farms. They're like a large energy movement on sustainability. And we actually worked with the Amazon, wind energy team to basically say, how do we optimize, the wind farms? How do we look at an individual wind turbine, understand speed, velocity, rotation, braking that happens that's required to make sure that you can kind of capture the most, capture energy efficiently. And all of this is run by the same kind of concepts. If you have a certain type of weather condition, then you do this. If you have really great weather and low winds, then you do something else. So all of that programming still comes into play today.
Wow, that's it's really cool. I didn't even know that Amazon was into wind farming like that. Could you tell us, you're again you're the head of worldwide solutions architects at Amazon when it comes to the Internet of Things. Could you tell us what the Internet of Things actually is?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like if you told me I was going to be a solution architect in IoT, when I was in, middle school, high school, I'm like, I don't know what any of those things are. They didn't really exist in the same way they do today. But think about the Internet of Things as, smart home. If you have a smart thermostat, even if you're into gaming, a lot of gaming consoles, if you want to get the latest game update, these are devices that are connected to the internet. And then solution architects, like what my team does is I have a team of 40 people around the world, and they help customers connect these type of devices to the internet. So think of customers like if you've got a Vizio TV, they're a big customer of ours. You can kind of catch them on YouTube talking about how it's easy to connect TVs and, help people get a better viewing experience. So we work with customers around that to kind of solve the things part of the Internet of Things.
Wow. So okay. So there's LG with their refrigerator, right?
Yeah.
And then I guess all the Echo devices are things that connected to the internet, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you think like if you've got a Roomba in your house and it's kind of cleaning, that's a thing. And then you can even look at things like how do you get a package to your door? When someone's routing a delivery package, they normally have a tablet in their hand. And that's also a thing to help them figure out where is the most optimal route to help deliver your Amazon package. So lots of things are connected, which is a fun space to be in.
Yeah, and they can also talk to one another. They're not just it's not just one way to some computer somewhere or to your they can communicate with one another and coordinate, I guess, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's very funny. I've done it throughout my entire house, but it's great. I can kind of, when it's time for bedtime, I can just say like, Echo, Alexa, it's time for bed, and the lights go off. I've got a smart lock. The smart lock locks, and it's just, it's all automated. So that's the fun part, for sure.
Wow. So you already mentioned how you never thought that you'd be into the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things, it didn't even really exist when you were in high school. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today, and who were the people who helped you along the way?
Yeah, Pat, that's a really cool question. I'll start with how I got to where I am today. And I'll say, I think the fun thing for me is that if you notice in my name, I'm Nigerian. So, when my parents kind of came here to the States, it was just assumed that I was either going to be a doctor or a lawyer. Like that's what you just like Nigerians, like you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer. My father was a doctor. But I can't handle blood or anything. Like I have a very queasy stomach. So I was like, clearly I can't be a doctor. But I started falling in love with programming when I was really young. So I started doing programming. And then as I got a little bit older, I really got into sports. I grew up in Tennessee. I was a big Volunteers fan. So Peyton Manning was a Volunteer. So I was like really into football. And I was also really into basketball. And you can't see me, but I'm only like 5'5". And I thought I was going to play in the NBA. And my dad kind of came to, help me set reality that I probably wouldn't be too tall. Look up Muggsy Bogues. He played in the NBA. He's my height. But I love sports. And I started getting into math again. And I had to figure out how I could do both. So I went to school and I studied computer science, but then I also started doing things to just keep my athletic passion going, like dance. And I've kind of used both of those skill sets to be in a position where, as a solution architect, you don't just do a lot of coding, you also help like explain these concepts. It's kind of like you're an artist in a sense. You're trying to help people understand and articulate strategy, and you've got to engage them in the right way. So that's kind of how I've gotten to where I am today. I think there's been a lot of people who've helped me there. Two people that really stand out. One was my professor in college. Like, he was a great mentor to me. His name is Brian Kerningham, and I did bring a picture of him as well. But if the name sounds kind of familiar, Brian Kerningham actually wrote the first programming book. So if you go back into the archives a long time ago and say, what was one of the first programming books ever written? It was by Brian Kerningham on the C language. And he really taught me how to think differently and how to apply those programming concepts kind of out into the real world. So he's definitely one of the people who stand out to me the most.
Wow. And who's the second person?
Yeah, funny enough, I'd actually say I really like to have people kind of, as I start out and then as I get a little bit older. I will give a plug to my third grade teacher. I was thinking about this a little bit. Mrs. Bond. And what was funny is I didn't start programming until I was in the fourth grade. But Mrs. Bond was like, you should really, you have a very like analytical thinking. Like, I was really good at math at the time. And she's like, you should do this thing called computers. Like, it's kind of new. We don't have that many. Like, you should go do it. And so she was definitely one of my inspirations in starting like my curiosity at a young age. And then I brought one other person who's been my mentor more recently. And it's this gentleman in the middle. This is a podcast show we're doing at work. But the person in the middle is actually James Gosling. And if you don't know who James Gosling is, he wrote Java. So if you know the Java programming language, it runs on everything. It runs on your Androids, tablets, and things like that. He is the inventor of it. So he's actually been a more recent mentor for me. And it's been great to pick his brain about, being in the internet and being in programming when, there was only 10 or 15 people doing it.
Wow. Yeah, you're very fortunate. I wanted to remind our participants that they actually can ask questions by using the Q&A feature. So please feel free, folks out there, to ask your students if they have any questions, and then type them into the Q&A, and we'll try to address them as we go here. Waleed, you talked about people helping you along the way and how you got to where you are today. What obstacles have you faced along the way, and how have you dealt with those obstacles?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of interesting obstacles. I would say growing up, I did grow up in a very small town. So I think, I grew up in the South. One of the obstacles I had was when I got into college, I didn't give it a name, but I went to Princeton University. It's, it's a prestigious school, and there's, all these famous names there. But one of my obstacles was like, I didn't feel like I actually fit in that world. Like, I was like, wow, I'm surrounded by, there was someone in my class who was like the number 2 fencer, like Olympic fencer in the world. And we had people going to the Olympics for swimming and all these things. And, I sat at a computer and programmed and I danced. And so I always felt like I didn't necessarily fit in, or maybe my skill set wasn't the right one. And so one of the things I've had to consistently overcome is understanding that like my unique background brings something to the table. And I have to be a little bit more kind of open to the experience I've had, and that they have, value for others. So that's something I think kind of going through my academic years has been a challenge. I would say more recently, in this kind of global world, I have a really large team, and there's people in Korea and people in Europe and people in the Americas, and understanding that all of them have a different kind of cultural experience, and making sure that all of their voices are heard and all of their thinking is kind of brought together. And so it's kind of come a little bit full circle for me in some of the challenges I face today.
Oh, that's really good advice. I know that as adults, you're talking about yourself at Princeton. You were an adult already, and even now, and even me now as an adult, you sometimes look at other people and you think, oh, they're so smart or whatever. What do I have to contribute? And you forget that it's not about not about being smart as much as like people bring different skill sets and very unique experiences to a situation.
Mm-hmm.
And students out there, all of you are bringing something unique to a situation. And sometimes the problem is not trying to be smart or be like everyone else. The problem is trying to figure out how to use your unique experiences and be in a situation where you can use those special characteristics that you have.
Yeah.
We have a question actually from Nicole at West High. What advice, Wale, would you give to students who are just getting started in their first computer science class? And what classes should they take, or side projects to try out?
Awesome. This is a really good question. When you first start out in like computer science and programming, most of the time you do, like what I call the happy path. Like everything works, you copy and paste everything exactly right. You compile it, nothing happens, which is normally a good sign, and then you run it. What I found really helpful is I actually tell people, make some mistakes on purpose. So once you have the perfect, program, and you've written your function or your object correctly, go in and do things incorrectly. Because what it's going to help you understand is like what happens when things don't go as planned. When you get into like, the internet, I work in Amazon Web Services, so the cloud, like all these data centers and things like that. Our motto is everything fails all the time. So if you start taking your programs and understand, okay, what happens when this thing fails? What message do I get? You actually get a lot more experience with the same thing you've been writing. And I think for side projects as well, you should do something you're passionate about. Like you want a side project that challenges you, but you're also really interested in. My first side project in the 4th grade, I was very much into Snoopy. So the character Snoopy. So I did a lot of like graphic animations of Snoopy. I'd have him like walk around and like get on top of his doghouse and like, so, but it was fun for me. Like I loved seeing the output of what I was doing. So find something you're passionate about, and then it'll also kind of lead you to additional learnings.
Yeah, I would add that oftentimes teachers are assigning projects, and students, you're completing these projects probably just fine, or or maybe not so fine. Either way, it's an opportunity for you to kind of personalize what that project is. So while maybe a teacher had assigned for you all to I don't know, just create some art or do a particular animation or something like that, and you decided to personalize it by animating Snoopy. In the same way, kids, if you're doing some kind of like math operator calculation Boolean logic project, there's no reason that potentially you could turn it into something that I always think about, like something to do with like shoes or clothes. I'm not saying I think about shoes or clothes all the time. Whenever I think about those projects, I think of like, oh, how could I turn that project into something that might help me pick clothes or make my life easier, like a clothes and shoe matcher, something like that. Who knows?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We have another question from Adam. Do you have any advice for our class? We're a grade 11 computer programming class and working on our final project using construct.net. So I don't know if you're familiar with that. We can go ahead and I'm gonna open it up in a tab just to see what
Yeah,
it.
I think it's I want to say it's funny. I work with our gaming team every so often. I want to say like if I recall correctly, it's in gaming.
It's definitely.
I remember a little bit as well. Like I think this is one of the interesting parts because like you won't know all languages you run into. So when we go back to computer science, it's grounding yourself in the fundamentals, like I was mentioning earlier. Um, and so for things like Construct, if I remember correctly, they're kind of browser-based job like JavaScript type applications. So like some of the things I look at, not knowing your final project, but what would be really interesting is, JavaScript has a lot of, when I talk about kind of things that you can experiment with, JavaScript does things like you can run things parallel, you can run things serially, you can do things like, set an event and then catch an event. And so as you think about the gaming experience, like think about interesting things you can do in that kind of event loop in JavaScript. So say like, well, what I was doing before is playing sound, but what if I decided to in that event not just play sound, but also make changes to the score on the fly? We kind of call this like dynamic behaviors. Like that's a really kind of cool concept in gaming. Like it learns and adapts to your style. You can do it in a really simple way today, which is just like take these interesting events and do something random with them. So maybe instead of just saying, well, I'm going to give you points in the sound, I'm going to give you, additional points because it's 5 o'clock. And you're doing it right at the end of your day. And that just allows you to experiment a little bit as well. JavaScript's an interesting language. I actually ran it at a company, like a startup with me and my friend. Debugging JavaScript has always been one of the things I've struggled with. So events have helped me try to rationalize what's happening as well.
Okay, thanks, Wale. We have a question about Internet of Things, which I had a question as well. Because as a teacher, the Internet of Things, I last taught in like 2013. It started really becoming a thing, and I was always curious how could I get my students exposed to that type of programming? Like so, like right now, there are teachers listening to us. Like, Wale, like, how do they? I mean, with our Echo devices, can we just go ahead and start coding for them? Like how do we get beginners involved in the Internet of Things?
Yeah, that's a really good question too. Like I think there's a couple things you can program your echoes. You probably shouldn't. They actually take a lot of work. Like you have to get into the details of them a bit. But what's really interesting is, and maybe Pat, I can find a way to share this, or people can search for it. There's two things. There's this platform called Raspberry Pi. They're great to use. Like they're very, very simple. The other thing that we have, Amazon actually launched this recently. It's called the EduKit. So it's like an MCU, a microcontroller. So very, very small form factor. Oh, here we go. I was like, I think I have a test one on my desk. So they're very, very small form factor. And you can actually like order these off of Amazon and they teach you the basics of hardware. So you understand, what does a serial port mean to communicate to another, part of the device? How do you actually do a hello world on a piece of hardware? So this is one thing. EduKit's really great. Raspberry Pis, and most of these have like very simple getting started as well. So I'd recommend either one of those to start learning. If you go the EduKit route too, there's a whole video series. So I'll be happy to find a way to kind of share it with the group afterwards.
Okay, thanks, Wale. Next question. You mentioned the importance of making mistakes. Can you share one mistake you made at your job and what you learned from it?
Oh, I make a lot of mistakes. That's a really good question. I'll actually talk about maybe the mistake I made with, I can't name the customer name, but we were basically doing a deployment for a customer, basically like this is last year, but you can think if you're in the kind of holiday season, there's lots of customers who need to get products out the door for holidays, right? You know, the
Yeah.
Christmas time, the right after Thanksgiving. And I was actually working with a customer where they were doing millions of devices that they're going to take for holidays. And normally when you do millions of devices, you want to have them test above and beyond what they're going to bring. But based on timing, we only had like a month and we really needed 2 to 3 months to do this work. And so I kind of made a decision like, let's just test capacity like as close that we can get to for your holidays. So we didn't do what I normally recommended. We kind of did a smaller one. Unfortunately, we basically launched on Black Friday and they were underwater. They were basically like, instead of being able to handle everything, they could only handle about like 2/3 of what they normally could. And this was clearly my mistake. I would have told them to delay things or try to escalate and have them add more capacity. So it ended up costing us about 2 weeks of work afterwards. So as soon as this failed, we had to basically spend time helping them scale up correctly, do a bunch of remediations, catching errors around not handling capacity, things we could have done earlier, but we waited for. That's probably my most recent mistake. I find even in those cases, like that mistake happened and everyone ended up being okay. It cost us a few weeks of time, but we were able to still help a customer. So yeah, that's probably my most recent one. It's a lot of late nights and coffee, which is not what I normally like to do. So.
Well, Wale, we're kind of at the end here. I know it went fast. I wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to speak directly to the students. Like, what do you want them to remember or take away from this class chat and from your experience?
Yeah, I mean, first off, thank you so much. Like, it's a pleasure just to be in front of everyone and to share my experience. I probably say there's like maybe one thing that's top of mind for me for people to take away, and I kind of talked about my experience and background a little bit. But I have this like Bruce Lee quote that sits at my desk, which basically talks about like, you know, absorb what is useful, discard what is not, and then make it uniquely your own. And I think the thing that stuck with me the most is making things uniquely my own. So you're going to learn a lot of skills, you're going to develop your technical capabilities, you're going to program more and more, but making it your own is what's really important. And so always bringing yourself, you know, into the work that you're doing and into the classes that you're in. And I'd also say the other thing I'd bring there is, you know, make sure you're working with your classmates too. Like, it's very easy to kind of work by yourself and do homework by yourself and code and program. But the things I've learned the most have been through the people that I've worked with. You know, in college, I had like peers I worked with really closely. In high school, I did as well. And they just make you a better kind of programmer and developer and a better person. So I hope I leave those two things with you. And it's just been an honor and appreciate the time.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And everyone else, thank you for joining us on Code.org's CS Journeys class chats. That was Wale Oladehin, Head of Worldwide Solutions Architects, Internet of Things at Amazon. Thank you for joining us. Please visit CS Journeys and for any more information and to sign up for future class chats. Thank you.